What Donald Trump is doing is wrong. Demanding vote recounts, refusing to concede, filing lawsuits claiming that he actually won the election. You know what he's trying to argue? That some of these ballots should count or shouldn't count, and it's all because he lost. What a crybaby Trump is. Anyway, guys. Now, here's a more important story, and this one is all about the integrity and the honor of the Democratic Party. You see, we have a Democratic congresswoman. Now, they're claiming she lost the race, but if we just file a lawsuit and claim the result should be overturned because some of these ballots should actually be counted, well, then she actually wins. Now, that's totally acceptable, but what Trump is doing is wrong. Okay, again, I'll drop the bit. You get it? Donald Trump challenges the result of the election, and he's running for president, so it's a nationwide race. There's many different states, many different counties, and he's saying, here's my constitutional challenge, here's my legal challenge. Now, the left has been primarily focused on claims of fraud, and partly because Trump is the one who keeps saying fraud over and over again. But the Trump lawsuits, for the most part, have been about process, have been about ballot validity, and constitutional rights. In some places, he's saying these votes should not count for these reasons, or certain votes were thrown out for reasons they shouldn't have been thrown out. Mostly, though, like the overwhelming majority of his argument is that some votes should be thrown out. Now, the Democrats are outraged. The media says Trump won't concede. They say this is sedition. That's right. Several outlets, several pundits, blue checkies on Twitter, saying that these Republican states and Republican Congress men and women who were signing onto this Texas lawsuit were proving the Republican Party was a seditious party. The Democrats say rabble, rabble. Well, I bring you now to a very important Iowa race, proving the absolute hypocrisy. Not that I think Republicans aren't hypocrites either. For the most part, I'll always clarify. I like the new surge of populist, working class type Republican candidates, not the crony establishment millionaires. And I'll say the same thing to a certain degree for the Democrats. I just don't necessarily trust most of the progressives. There's a couple of them I think have done some good things. And I'll definitely give a shout out to Rashida Tlaib. Although I've been critical of her in the past, she voted no on this bloated garbage spending bill, and that deserves respect. Credit where credit is due. What we're learning now with this Iowa race is that it's all about power. It's always been. So I shouldn't say we're learning this now. It's just sort of a slap in the face to remind us it's always been this way. If Trump does it, it's wrong and it's sedition. If a Democrat does it, well, that is honor and integrity. You see, the media flows in one direction. And it's about time, I think, Trump supporters, conservatives, libertarian types, disaffected liberals, You stop playing the game on the Democrats' terms. And by that, I mean the media. Because let's be real, for the most part, most of these news outlets are just Democrat advocates. And all of us are constantly arguing on their terms about what is or isn't. There was a meme I saw. It was really fascinating. It says, if you're a Republican, start here. If a Democrat, start here. And it was this graph saying wild conspiracy theory, unfounded claims, lack of evidence. Basically, what it was saying was for Democrats, if there's a scandal, you start by saying it's nonsensical and a wild conspiracy theory and ignore everything they're doing. And if you're a conservative, you have to eventually walk your way towards that there's actually evidence. Let me rephrase that. When the Democrats make a claim that Trump is evil or whatever, or Russian, it's just true. And then they work their way from there. And then over a year later, you'll find out it was nonsense. When you get a story about Hunter Biden, they'll claim it's a wild conspiracy theory. And then a year later, it turns out it was true. Because the media has rigged the game. These are Democrat activists. And for obvious reasons, they live in big cities. Everyone around them is a Democrat. They think they're speaking to all people or the regular person. Gone are the days where they tried to actually understand the middle of the country. When Trump won in 2016, we had the New York Times go drive around the country, whatever, trying to understand what they got wrong. And they got it wrong again. It's only getting worse. So this is the hypocrisy. But my friends, there's a real reason why the Democrats are absolutely desperate to steal this seat. You see what I did there? They're demanding that certain votes get counted so that this Democrat can win. Because in my opinion, for one, this Democrat wants to win. She wants to be in Congress. Democrats want power. But they're in serious trouble after losing a large chunk of their majority. The progressives have gained power, and thanks to Jimmy Dore, could actually force a vote on Medicare for all, which the Democrats don't want. The weakness that the weakened state they're in now because the Republican gains means they're desperate to cling to whatever power. So let's go through all this and I'll explain to you why they're so desperate. But let's start with some good old fashioned hypocrisy from the Democratic Party. Before we get started, head over to timcast.com/donate if you'd like to support my work. There are many ways you can give. I got a P.O. box if you want to send me some stuff. But the best thing you can do is share this video. And oh boy, please share this one because it's just funny. All right, look, this lady running for the Democratic Party is trying to unseat a Republican, filing a lawsuit. The guy who filed the lawsuit is one of the principal voices complaining about Trump filing lawsuits. It's just too good. But I'll admit she's not running for president, so I'll give her that much. But still, come on. You can't try and use the legal system to overturn an election while complaining that someone else is doing the exact same thing. Please share this video to let people know how the system really works. And again, this is not a defense of the Republican Party. I've routinely said I don't like the establishment crony Republicans. It's just that the populist wing of both left and right in this country, in my opinion, are better in many ways than the establishment. The establishment is trash. I'll put it that way. From the Wall Street Journal editorial board, the House fight heats up. An Iowa candidate asks Democrats not to seat the Republican winner. Hypocrite. How bloody-minded will Democrats be with their precariously thin House majority? We're about to find out as Speaker Nancy Pelosi's caucus considers an election challenge from Iowa's 2nd Congressional District. On November 30th, Iowa certified Republican candidate Mariannette Miller Meeks, the winner of the district, which extends southeast of Des Moines and is currently held by a Democrat. The margin was 6 votes. If anyone ever says to you, it's just 1 vote, it won't matter. No, your vote definitely matters. They say. On Tuesday, Democrat Rita Hart submitted a brief asking the House of Representatives to overturn that outcome. Authored by Democratic election lawyer Mark Elias, it says counting 22 mostly absentee ballots would give Ms. Hart a 9-vote lead. The brief asks the House to order another recount and use its constitutional authority to seat Miss Hart instead. That is her right. And if it gets overturned because the courts agree, that is her right. But I will tell you this. If the courts in Iowa agree to take the case, you're going to see some very serious anger from Trump supporters because I fully expect this to be dismissed on procedural grounds, just like many of Trump's lawsuits or the lawsuits from conservatives and Trump supporters. We'll see how the game plays out. They say among the reasons the ballots were wrongly excluded, the brief says, are signature placement, envelope seal, and timeliness. Ms. Miller Meeks' campaign must file a response, which could raise other ballot disputes within 30 days. Her campaign said in a statement, Congresswoman-elect Mariannette Miller Meeks won the vote on election night, won the 24-county audit and official canvass, won the 24-county recount, and was unanimously certified by the state of Iowa as the winner of the election by a bipartisan council. Could you imagine if we just substituted Biden with Trump and just play the game? Okay, people want to win. But I'll tell you this. I think she is allowed to do this. I think she should get her day in court. I think her challenge should be allowed. And of course, they'll respond in kind. Miller Meeks will file their response. The campaign already issued that statement saying she won. And if there is a judge who says, look, these ballots should not have been excluded, then so be it. It will have its day in court. But I wonder, will YouTube allow certain criticisms? I wonder. I recently tweeted about another story. Rawstory.com published a claim. It's called Busted, Why the Numbers Behind Mitch McConnell's Re-Election Don't Add Up. This story from Raw Story alleges widespread voter fraud and argues that Mitch McConnell should not have won. Yet Twitter did not flag my tweet and say it's in dispute. Only when Trump does it. Do you get how the game is played now? Back to the Wall Street Journal, they say, so we read that part already. One political vulnerability for the Hart campaign is that it did not exhaust its Iowa court challenges before asking the House to intervene. The campaign said there wasn't time for judicial relief in the 1-week window between certification and the December 8th deadline for a 5-member state contest court ruling. But if only 22 ballots are at issue, the complaint could have been presented to Iowa judges. Meanwhile, so it looks like they'll get thrown out on a procedural grounds, which I would expect, same as Trump. They say, meanwhile, the counting continues in New York's 22nd congressional district upstate, where a state judge ordered a recanvass this month after Republican Claudia Tenney led by 12 votes in the initial count. Now she leads by 19. But the process is unlikely to be completed before the new Congress is sworn in. If Miss Tenney comes out ahead, Mr. Elias's firm, which is at work in the district as well, could also ask the House to seat its client. Mark Elias is on Twitter all day talking about lawsuits and a critic of Donald Trump's attempts at suing to overturn the results. But it's because he's a partisan player in this. Look, if I see two people fighting and I don't know who they are, and I'm like, I see you guys hitting each other and they both point at each other and scream, he started it. What am I supposed to do? Okay. Now, we all have our biases. If you're a Trump supporter and you see Trump fighting, you'll be like, nah, Trump's right. This guy's saying, nah, Biden's right. But don't come out and pretend like you're like he was swinging punches. Swinging punches is wrong. It's like, bro, you're swinging punches too, man. Your argument is meaningless to me. If you want to engage in lawfare or legal challenges, you are free to do so. And with respect, I will say, carry on, good sir. Just stop pretending like it's wrong for Trump to do it when you do the exact same thing. Rest assured, we already know that if Joe Biden did lose, they would not concede. And Hillary Clinton said Joe Biden should not concede under any circumstances. Well, as I've said before, Trump must have assumed it was great advice and he's following through with it. Thanks, Hillary. They go on to say, the last time Congress overturned a state-certified House election result was when the Democratic majority didn't seat an Indiana Republican in 1985. The GOP anger over that decision may have contributed to Newt Gingrich's populist success in the House. And overturning an election in 2021 would be would also guarantee a backlash. The stakes are also high because Joe Biden has appointed 3 Democratic House members to his administration, meaning that if Republicans hold the seats in Iowa's 2nd and New York's 22nd, the Democrats could temporarily have a mere 219 seats at the start of the term, with 218 needed for an absolute majority. Oh boy, does it get spicy. Because now we see the progressives starting to salivate, realizing now's their chance to pressure Pelosi. And I think Pelosi is awful. And I think she should not be Speaker of the House again. And I know they'll probably still end up voting for her because as much as we got progressive populists who are supposed to represent the people and the left, they more represent themselves as snap-back politicians who are tweeting too much and not actually doing anything. AOC goes on Twitter and says, this COVID relief bill is so awful, we had no time to read it. I vote yay. What? Okay, at least she spoke. I'll give her that much. She spoke up against it. Rand Paul says, how could you do this? We have no time to read this. I vote no. Hey, that makes sense. Rashida Tlaib voted no on this, and I give her my respect. Not that she wants it or needs it, but, I give credit where credit is due. If someone does something good, I will say it. The only way you encourage people to do the right thing is by praising them for it. I hope she continues down that path of challenging this garbage. I don't like that she was very bombastic and screaming, impeach Trump, impeach the MFer and things like that. But I hope she improves. And, look, people got to do better. And we got to make sure that when they do good, we respect them for it to encourage them to keep doing it. They say that could create the potential strike at their majority, could create an incentive for Mrs. Pelosi to abuse House rules for fear of falling short in key progressive votes. Alternatively, the GOP's House success in 2020 might remind Democrats of the public's wariness of their tactics and the political risks for 2022 of stealing a House seat. Perhaps, but something interesting has been going on for some time. It's called Force the Vote. Ignited in part, or I believe Jimmy Dore is leading the charge. If you're not familiar with Jimmy Dore, Jimmy and I have a lot of the same criticisms for the Democrats, but he's coming from the left and I'm coming from, to be completely honest, more so the center and probably, in some capacity, a right position. Policy wise, I actually do lean slightly left, center left. But if you think the Democratic Party represents moderate, independents, centrist individuals in this country, you are wrong. That is absolutely not the case. For Jimmy, he wants Medicare for all. And I'll tell you straight up, I'm actually, when I'm presented with two ideas, a free market solution or Medicare for all, I'm actually more left on the issue, Medicare for all. My concern is, can a government actually pull it off? And that's the problem. Like, if you were to tell me we could guarantee everybody basic level healthcare, I'd say, like, I'm totally down for that. But I don't think we can. Recently, the CDC was issuing guidelines that we should give it the vaccine based on race. And right away, I'm like, that's why I don't like the system being controlled by the government. So I'm actually kind of a moderate on the issue. I am not necessarily for a total free market solution. I think maybe a public option, but I'm not here to debate healthcare. I'm here to show you what's going on and why the Democrats are freaking out and why they're desperate to keep their majority as strong as possible. It's called force the vote. They say fewer than 15 House reps can determine if Medicare for all gets a vote. Withhold your vote for Pelosi. For House Speaker, unless she commits to bring Medicare for all to a floor vote. It doesn't mean it will pass. But Jimmy Dore brought this up and said, I don't care. I want to know who is going to vote against healthcare in a pandemic. And I'm like, yes. No, this is one of the best things ever. And I think Trump supporters and conservatives should get on board with this as well. First of all, you could argue that Republicans have an opportunity to hurt Nancy Pelosi by supporting the progressive action. But I'm not even about that. I don't want that to be what it's about. I want to support this move because I want to expose the liars. I want these people who dance around claiming that they're a populist progressive and they want all these things put up or shut up. Show me what you really believe in. Do you actually support what you're claiming or are you a liar? Yeah, because I know what's going to happen. People like AOC, I don't think would support it. Okay, maybe she would. Okay, that's but there's going to be a lot of Democrats who are like, I'm in favor of this. If only we could get it done. And then you're like, yeah, you're lying. So go vote, force the vote. And the only reason this is possible is because the Republicans gained ground. Think about how crazy that is. The success of the Republicans at the House level have opened a door for the progressives to now push on Pelosi. And you'll love to see it. In the 117th Congress, which will be coming in January, I believe January 3rd, 2021, the Democrats have only about 10 votes above the Republicans. The Democratic Party will have 222 seats and 3 non-voting members. There will be 1 independent, probably who is going to be supporting the Democrats, and there will be 212 Republicans with 2 non-voting members. The Democrats, 10 votes. Nancy Pelosi could lose Speaker of the House. Not only that, they're 3 votes away from losing an absolute majority, so things could get particularly spicy. But let's wrap it back up and talk a bit about that hypocrisy. How about that? Raw story. Mitch McConnell. And they want to publish this story claiming that the numbers don't add up. And I'll tell you this. I think they fundamentally misunderstand why it is regular people switched from Democrat to Republican. That's what they noticed. They said it doesn't make sense. How could these Democrats be voting for Republicans? I'm like, it's actually really obvious because look what the Democrats do. Even Ocasio-Cortez is saying she doesn't want to force a vote on Medicare for all. Why? What's the worst that can happen? You have the vote, it gets struck down, and then you point the finger at Democrats. End of story. That's not going to help Republicans. If anything, it'll help the moderate Democrats. Because if you get a moderate Democrat who says no to Medicare for all, Republicans certainly aren't running on that. So it's only good for progressives. Why wouldn't AOC do it? And why are the Young Turks opposed to this? Well, mostly Cenk Uygur. It makes no sense. What I can't stand is the hypocrisy. I may disagree with them on a lot of policy issues because I'm more of a moderate mixed economy type, not a far left socialized medicine type. But I at least believe in integrity and principle. And if the Democrats and the progressives really believe in this stuff like they claim to, by all means, prove it. Because what I hate more than anything, liars and hypocrites. Now, as for Donald Trump's mission, interestingly, Donald Trump summoned Pennsylvania state lawmakers to the White House for mystery luncheon as more House Republicans join his lost cause bid to overturn election. Now, listen, I know you've probably heard it from me. I'm not convinced Trump's going to be able to pull anything off. I know the reason I would say a lot of Trump supporters don't like hearing that is whether it's true or false, you need to maintain morale among your base. So one of the things the Democrats and the left have been trying desperately to do is convince Trump supporters it'll never happen. They'll say it's over every single day. They claim Biden won every single day because something keeps changing. But if Biden won, there would not be a persistent fight from Trump because the reality is Biden didn't win. Though I think it's 99.99%, likely that Joe Biden is going to be inaugurated on the 20th, That doesn't mean Trump lost. And we're far from normal right now. So it's hard to, I would call this my normalcy bias. I see no reason why the establishment and the machine would allow Trump to do anything. He theoretically could. Perhaps, as we're hearing that in Arizona, the legislature might certify the results for Trump. These state level legislatures have final say. They could theoretically, before January 6th, special session or the next session, vote to certify Republican electors, sending dueling electors. We could see that happen. They've already cast, the Republican electoral candidates already cast procedural votes. So the states could just certify those votes. When Mike Pence, when it comes time to count, could be presented with two certified envelopes from the legislature or the governor. And he could say, Constitution says the legislature has final say. Totally possible. Trump could theoretically invoke the Insurrection Act and change the game outright, but I'm not entirely convinced he would do something like that because Trump needs to win legitimacy. And that's the reason why calling out the hypocrisy and the double standard is so important. You cannot claim Trump is illegitimate for 4 years. You cannot then claim that his attempts at legal challenges to the election are illegitimate when you are doing the exact same thing. But that's a big problem. It's a big problem in that you have two parent factions, which break down into like 4 or 5, maybe more than that if you really want to get into the nitty gritty, pointing the finger at each other, but both believing they're the good guys. Now, of course, as you know, I tend to believe that the right is more correct than the left. And there's really simple examples of why. I mean, in an op-ed, Cenk Uygur of the Young Turks incorrectly stated the amount of lawsuits Trump has lost. And I'm like, when they get basic facts wrong that you can actually look up, I don't trust them. But more importantly, what the right has right now is not just Trump sycophants. Of the 74 million votes for Trump, you have disaffected liberals, Democrats to deplorable, like Jack Murphy's book, if you've read it. People who voted Democrat before or who are independent voting for Donald Trump. I'm far from right wing in terms of politics. Be it traditional societal values? No, I'm actually center left. Economically, I'll be honest with you guys, and I say this all the time. As much as many of these far left and resistance Democrats don't want to admit it, I'm actually rather left economically. I took some economic test and I'm like, 60, 70%, left and like 30% right wing. I actually lean left on a ton of economic policy issues, a ton. But I'm very, very anti-woke, anti-critical race theory and all that stuff. And so when I look at the current opportunities in this country, you had Joe Biden, who is warmonger, crony, corporate politician, and Trump. And I'm like, Trump's definitely the better option for a lot of reasons. Not for right-wing policy or anything like that, for ending wars, which is pro-America and libertarian type. So I'm actually more of like a center-left libertarian. Left libertarians, easiest way I can explain to people. Like hippie living on a farm, sharing watermelon kind of vibes. Not authoritarian far left. But you look at someone like Bernie Sanders, and they would tell you that Bernie is, left libertarian. He's not. He may be slightly on the libertarian spectrum, but the challenge with true libertarianism on the left is encouraging people and convincing them to cooperate. That's how it has to be done. With right libertarianism, it's actually easy. You offer them money. Hey, I'll give you this money. You exchange this, that, or this. With left libertarianism, it's like, would you be willing to work with me on this? If you say no, you got to keep trying to convince somebody. It's a very difficult position, and that's why most leftists aren't actually libertarians. They want to impose things through the authoritative process. Yeah, I can't agree with that. It's very, very difficult. But I ultimately become more of a liberal on issues. Donald Trump is making moves. The Democrats voted earlier this year to restrict his ability to invoke the Insurrection Act. I don't know if Trump is going to do anything spicy or crazy, but I will tell you something funny is going on. Trump White House staffers received conflicting messages about their departure. Staffers were first told they will start departing on the week of January 4th. They were later told to disregard the memo. I wonder if these staffers received this bye-bye message because it's kind of a default process. And then Trump saw it and said, no, we're not leaving. Or maybe Trump really is just trying to milk all of this to the maximum degree, but he knows he'll be out. In a statement he made on the COVID spending bill and direct payments, he said, if you don't get it done, the next administration will have to, and maybe it'll be me, and we will. And it sounded to me when he said that like he does acknowledge the likelihood that he's the next administration is not likely. It could be. Maybe the American people revolt when they see what Congress is doing, and then they demand Trump do something. Or maybe Trump really does believe he won in a landslide, and thus he has popular support for any action he would take. Perhaps he believes that the American people, for the most part, the overwhelming majority, want him to be president. It doesn't matter if it's true. It matters if he believes it. If Trump believes he has the support, then he'll act. Well, I'll put it this way. He needs to really believe in his support for doing this. And of course he'll act, but I'm not convinced he will get there. January 6th, there's supposed to be a big, event or whatever in D.C. Now, leftist groups are saying they're going to show up to oppose the right. Alex Jones says there's going to be 10 million patriots occupying D.C. and they won't let Joe Biden become president. And we'll see. I think that'll be a very important day. Trump is having these meetings. Trump is saying we're not leaving. On January 6th, if Trump supporters show up and prove to Trump they're willing to travel from all over this country in support of him, then Trump probably will take action. But if people don't show up, then Trump is going to be like, I don't have the backing to do anything. That's why it's so important the media claims he's illegitimate. That's why it's so important that the media says, these Democrats say he's already lost the race. Because demoralization will prevent people from supporting him. And it's already working within his own administration. Many people advising him to just sort of walk away and give up. It's over and things like that. At least the media is reporting. I don't know if Trump cares. And I wonder what Trump would be willing to do to, in his mind, save this country. What you need to understand, and a lot of people, especially on the left, don't get. If I say something like that, I'm not talking about what's true or not. I'm talking about what Trump believes is true. That will be the determination, or that will give us a better understanding of what he's willing to do. If Trump believes he needs to save this country from a Chinese communist takeover, well, then Trump's going to do a lot. Trump is going to insurrection act. Trump is going to put key loyalists in the Pentagon. Trump is going to start advising his staff and others that they're not leaving. His chief of staff will come out and make a public declaration that there will be a second Trump administration. Trump will keep saying we're going to win. Yeah, kind of like the things he's already doing. Will he go one step beyond? I don't know. If Trump believes he does not have any support for this, then he's not going to do anything. He's going to say, what's the point? It won't work. That's why January 6th is going to be the most important day. Do Trump supporters have the political willpower to show up? I'm not convinced. I'm not trying to be disparaging or disrespectful. I'm just not convinced. I think I lean towards like 55 to 60% probability that the Trump supporters will show up en masse and you'll get that 10 million, man march. But they had about 200,000 the last time. And they kept saying it was a million or more. It was 200,000. And that's the moderate estimate. Many Democrats were mocking him, saying they called for a million. They got 200,000. Not bad. Some said it was only 100,000. Either way, it's a lot of people. The difference between then and now is that January 6th is the last day. If Trump supporters aren't willing to travel, they're not willing to step up to the plate, then Trump, he didn't have the support in the first place. So it's really an issue of whether or not Trump supporters are going to say, fly from all these different states. What you got to understand is that a lot of Trump supporters are in rural areas and they're in the center, they're in the center of the country and in the Midwest. It's not easy. That's the challenge. It's not easy. Will the Trump, I see the Trump supporters saying Trump should cross the Rubicon, and then that's where, turning back when, in Rome, Caesar crosses the Rubicon, etc. Will Trump supporters cross the Rubicon is the bigger question. You can talk about Trump all day and night. I think Trump's willing to go the extra mile, but he needs people to do it. So if you were to ask me, will Trump supporters, fight tooth and nail and make sacrifices for Trump? I'd probably say yes, but will we see it on January 6th? I lean towards yes, but it really is a hard maybe. That's when we're going to see. But also, don't forget, the left is planning on showing up to this as well. So it's going to get bonkers. I'll leave it there, though. The hypocrisy of the Democratic Party. I tell you what, huh? Next segment will be coming up tonight, 8 p.m. live at youtube.com/TimCastIRL. Come check it out. It's going to be a whole lot of fun. And then I'll let you know for the next couple of days, Christmas and Christmas Eve, I'm going to be off because it's a holiday. And, to be completely honest, I'm not doing anything too special. I'm going to have, Christmas, open presents and stuff. But it's just incredibly impossible to do work on these days because everyone else kind of stops working. there's not much to do and talk about. So you work twice as hard, and then everyone's, doing family stuff. So it really is just better to hang out with friends, family, crack open some presents, have some gingerbread cookies, some eggnog, and have a good time. So with that being said, I'll say wish y'all a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. And check out youtube.com/TimcastIRL tonight at 8 p.m. live. We'll be hanging out and hope to see you there.